Gordon Ramsay savagely critiques a cupcake by Buck Swisher. It was a completely normal day in Ponyville. The sun was shining, some birds were singing, and every pony was going about their daily business. Pinkie Pie was running the counter at Sugar Cube Corner, proud that she hadn't had any unsatisfied customers. Yet. In walks Gordon Ramsay, a most interesting food critic. He has tried and tested every dish there is, and he has complained about them all as well. He walked in with a natural air of disdain around him, as if he could foresee that the food he was preparing to eat was not going to meet his standards. He walked up to the counter, where he was met with Pinkie's greeting. "Welcome to Sugar Cube Corner," she said happily. "What is it you have here?" inquired Ramsay in a questioning tone. "Well, the cupcakes are the best," Pinkie replied, "but we also have cakes, donuts, and other desserts." "I'll have a cupcake then," Gordon said. He then pulled a handful of bits out of his pocket to pay for them, because this is a crack fic and I don't have time for plot advancement. "One cupcake coming up," said Pinkie. Gordon found an empty table and sat down. He looked around at the bakery. To him, it looked subpar. A moment later, a decent-sized cupcake was placed in front of him. "Ah, thank you, my darling," said Gordon. Pinkie stood over him with a large smile, waiting for him to compliment her on it. That wasn't going to happen. Gordon took a bite and almost immediately furrowed his eyebrows. His face scrunched up a bit, and after he swallowed, he looked up at Pinkie. Her smile faltered a bit. "This is dry," he said. "It's dry!" His sudden volume increase caused everyone in Sugar Cube Corner to stare at him. Pinkie kept her smile planted on her face, though she felt terrible about Gordon's comment. "There's clearly not enough moisture in this," Ramsay continued. "I mean, seriously, where did you cook this? In a fucking easy bake oven?" Pinkie kept smiling, trying to hold back a few tears. Everyone else just stared at Gordon, shock clearly visible on their faces. A few ponies passing by had hoped to see what was going on. "It's like a fucking frozen pancake," said Gordon. "And the frosting, Jesus Christ, what is this fucking frosting?" Not even waiting for a reply, Gordon continued. "It's like adding a layer of dried paste, like a fucking shrink-wrapped dessert you buy at the dollar store." The silence and stares from every other pony continued as Gordon continued to verbally destroy Pinkie Pie. "And it doesn't even look that great either. It looks like it was thrown together in 20 minutes or less. How can you possibly have a business around these? Who the fuck said these things were the best?" At last, Pinkie couldn't take it anymore. Gordon's roasting had been too much. She ran back to the kitchen, unable to contain her tears any longer. Still, no pony else spoke. Gordon snorted. "Really? You can't take a little criticism? I'm surprised you don't get it more often with how poorly this shit was made. And look at these sprinkles. They're like miniature rocks. You might as well have made this with sawdust," he sighed. "Unbelievable." Finally, he emerged from Gordon's world where nothing is good enough and looked around him. The crowd that was staring at Gordon at this very moment was larger than the crowd Rainbow Dash used to attract back when she was cool. In fact, she was standing among the many speechless ponies. As mouthy as she was, she couldn't think of anything to say to the savage British food critic. As if his extreme roasting hadn't been enough already, Gordon then began to complain about the way Sugar Cube Corner was arranged. "And look at this place," he said. "That table's in an odd spot. There's decorations all over the place. What is this, a fucking 4-year-old's birthday party?" He examined the counter. "It's covered in fucking sugar," he said. "Covered!" At least Gordon thought it was sugar. But how else was Pinkie supposed to be energetic and happy all day? He peered into the kitchen the best he could. "My goodness," he said, squinting. "That kitchen looks terrible. All of you must be fucking idiots to not be able to make a simple fucking cupcake. I'd be terrified to try anything else on this shitty menu." He took one last look around him at the bakery, scoffed once again and headed for the door. However, he would have to surpass a mob of shocked ponies first. "What the fuck are you all staring at? Fucking move!" Gordon yelled. "Why did you say those things?" said one of the ponies in the crowd. She had tears in her eyes. "I've got to be fucking honest," Gordon replied. "The food was shit." He continued trying to break the wall of ponies. As he was about to start shoving, the two owners of the shop, Mr. and Mrs. Cake, emerged. "What in Celestia's name happened here?" said Mr. Cake. "Oh, for fuck's sake," said Gordon Ramsay. "The food here is shit. I'm not impressed by this place. And if these things would move the fuck out of my way, I could get the hell out of here." Fed up with this second-class establishment, Gordon began shoving his way through the pony mob. Mr. and Mrs. Cake couldn't have been more confused about the scene they had walked in on. But unfortunately for them, they wouldn't get any explanations, just a few stutters of, he just... from the witnesses. Gordon began to walk down the street, further away from the bakery. Rainbow Dash, whose voice was finally back from its lunch break, said, "We need to stop him!" But of course, no pony listened to her because she's just a blue cunt. Applejack wasn't there because she's oblivious to everything on her farm. Who knows what the others were doing? After a minute or so of walking, Gordon Ramsay stopped, turned around, and gave the finger to Sugar Cube Corner. Then he disappeared, off to break the soul of somebody else. Author's note. Thanks for reading, y'all. I hope you enjoyed my latest piece of shit crackfic. Hopefully this made you smile and maybe even made your day 1% better. It's why I write these. Pinkie Pie Fights Gordon Ramsay by Buck Swisher. Gordon Ramsay was known for leaving destruction and despair in his savage Scottish wake. He was known for crushing the souls of chefs, young and old, but after he had verbally destroyed Pinkie Pie, what he didn't know was that every day since it had happened last week, she had been building on a certain anger inside her, an anger that could only be quenched by kicking Gordon's ass. Pinkie finally felt she was ready. She went to Twilight and asked her to summon Gordon. Twilight magically did it because nothing has to make sense in a crackfic. Upon Gordon's appearance, many ponies gasped. Some ran. Gordon just stood there, confused and angry to find himself back in a place where ponies can't cook. "Seriously, for fuck's sake, why the fuck am I back here?" he said. Then he saw Pinkie. He scoffed. "You again?" Pinkie didn't speak, but rather stare at Gordon. It was a death stare like no other. The rest of the main six were watching nervously from behind Pinkie. "Can you not speak?" said Gordon. "I don't have time for this. I need to get the fuck out of here." Before he could finish, Pinkie charged at him, ploughing into his gut and thus preventing speech. Gordon then pulled a spatula out of nowhere, because like I said, nothing has to make sense. He whacked Pinkie upside the head with it, like a Puerto Rican mother, until she got off of him. She continued to stare at him, preparing her next attack. "You think I'm not prepared for a fight?" said Gordon. "I'm always ready for a fight." He pulled out another spatula. Pinkie charged again, but was promptly whacked on both sides of her head by Gordon's spatulas of doom. "Maybe we could sort this out without fighting?" proposed Twilight. "No, this is the only way!" Pinkie shot back. Gordon snorted. "Clearly you're not going to emerge victorious." For the second time today, Gordon was interrupted, this time by a forceful kick in the back from none other than Starlight Glimmer, who had seen the whole thing. She was there last time too, just nobody cared. Gordon pitched forward and hit dirt. He flipped over and looked up at Starlight. "Who the fuck are you?" he asked. Wasting no time with introductions, Starlight aimed a kick at his chest, but he was ready. He used his spatula to block the attack and stood up. "Fool!" he said. "Never wait to execute an attack." He threw the spatula with incredible precision at Starlight, causing it to smack her between the eyes. She swayed for a moment, dazed. Gordon's spatula flew back to him like a boomerang. It was at this moment that the main six and Starlight realised that Gordon was a combat expert. He wasn't actually a combat expert, but he was for this fic. He looked around at all the ponies, daring one of them to advance. He looked behind him, where Pinkie was preparing to kick him, and when she attempted to buck him, he dodged the attack. "Ha!" said Ramsay. He whacked Pinkie with a spatula again. "Buck this!" said Rainbow Dash. She flew towards Gordon at light speed, but all he had to do was duck. Rainbow went flying through a window and into a small shop. Gordon turned to look at her. "Fool!" he called out. Starlight's horn began to glow, and so did Gordon's spatulas of doom. He realised what was happening and held onto them tight, causing Starlight to pull harder. Once it looked like she was pulling as hard as she could, Gordon let go, causing the spatulas to smack Starlight in the face so hard she flew back faster than Rainbow did. Once again, Gordon laughed. "You're just hurting yourselves," he said. While it was true that he could beat the main six, there was one thing that Gordon was weak against. And no, it wasn't Princess Celestia's fat ass or her sisters. Good try though. Twilight used her horn to summon a small sandwich, then levitated it up to Gordon's face. "What's this?" he asked. "It's a peace offering," she said. "We surrender." Gordon gave her a skeptical look, but decided to take the sandwich. He took a bite, and at that moment, Twilight smiled. "It's dry!" Gordon screamed so loud that Celestia almost dropped her cake. She looked out the window to see that a few hundred miles away, Gordon's anger had created a large crater in the centre of Ponyville. She quickly inhaled the rest of the cake and hauled her double wide over to Ponyville. At first, Twilight thought that her idea had backfired, but then she saw Gordon in the centre of the crater, convulsing and twitching. "It's too fucking dry," he choked out, coughing as his limbs continued to jerk. At last, Gordon had been defeated. Regardless of this, Starlight went into the crater and bucked Gordon with all her strength. She still had 2 red marks on her face from the spatulas. Just as Pinkie was preparing to do the same, Gordon disappeared in a cloud of dust. "Oh," said Pinkie, realising that she could no longer kick him in the face. Twilight sighed a sigh of relief. "Well, that takes care of that problem," she said. "Well, it doesn't take care of mine." Just then, the owner of the shop that Rainbow Dash had crashed into emerged. Turns out that the shop was run by none other than the infamous Anon, who really didn't give a shit about the whole Gordon Ramsay thing until now. He picked up Rainbow and dumped her outside the shop's broken window. She was unconscious. "Why?" Anon said angrily. "Can't I just live my fucking life without Rainbow crashing into me?" What the others didn't know was that Rainbow Dash had crashed into Anon, trying to stop Gordon Ramsay from leaving Ponyville last time. Anon was fed up, but unfortunately this story isn't about him. Celestia finally landed, though she was far too late. Her face was covered in cake crumbs. She burped. What did I miss? Should Something Be Missing? By RDT. Pinkie Pie woke up today feeling lazy. That in itself was not unusual. Pinkie didn't consider herself a morning pony anyways. The scent of yesterday's cupcakes still faintly wafted up from the shop below. The mirror reflected her own visage, the soft morning light giving it an ethereal look as it had always done. The clock ticked steadily onwards. But today, something was different, for Pinkie wondered about not having a nose. Just imagine it, she thought to herself as she looked into that small makeup mirror on her bedside table. Not that she often used makeup. She was generally comfortable with how she looked. Rather, she had looked into the mirror every morning, framed by that warm glow of the dawn, as a reminder. It was easy for Pinkie to lose herself in the life of the party, have all of her worries melt away, and for a short time became the party. But too many saw her as nothing else, and she was afraid that she would ever see herself in the same monotone way as nothing but an addict of fun. But in the mirror, with her mane seeming to glow, she understood something, that every pony's sparkle shifted depending on the light. The mirror would serve a different purpose today though, as Pinkie waved a hoof in front of where her nose was, and she imagined it would be covering nothing, just empty space between her hoof and her head, without a knob of flesh getting in the way of things. The lighting helped with that, and she giggled. And yet there was no reason. Every pony had a nose, did they not? But, tapping the tip of her snout, she couldn't help but think she'd rather have felt nothing there. It didn't make sense. She had a nose. She didn't get to just not have one. But, let's just play pretend. I can pretend, right? Yes? No? Maybe? She returned to the mirror, but there was more than just not seeing it now. She would not feel it on her face. She would no longer smell. Her breath no longer had to flow. Why did she feel content? Her reason eluded her, but she stared into the mirror, transfixed by the concept of a Pinkie Pie without a nose. Wait! There was that one time with Trixie and a magic jewel, right? But she could no longer remember why she had been so angry and terrified. Then, like the sun which inevitably came over the horizon, she understood. Until today, she had not known Pinkie Pie. That nose was not a part of her, despite how other ponies had seen her, and perhaps might still see her. She finally understood herself. She would show them. If only I could go back. I wonder if Trixie could do it again, or maybe Twilight. She's the super duper magic expert after all. But Twilight, she remembered, was currently on an excursion to study the mirror pool and had expected to be gone for several days. I guess I'll have to wait, she thought. Her hopes evaporated. The scent of cupcakes taunted her. But then Pinkie had another thought. What if I didn't have a right foreleg? She knew immediately where she would remove it. 2 hoof widths below the elbow, just a hair above the top of her knee. She wouldn't have to drag it around with her. It wouldn't get in the way of her baking whenever she needed to open the oven or measure the ingredients. It would be liberating. She imagined herself wearing a prosthetic, but mere imagination was not enough for her. She grabbed a pencil and a piece of paper. The right forehoof kept the paper steady on the bedside table as she used her mouth to draw. A circle here, a line there, and slowly the image took shape. She looked at it, and tears came to her eyes. Yet, like last time, the euphoria was short-lived. What if I didn't even have ears? Then the morning would be quiet. She wouldn't hear the rattle of carts being pulled along the street, or the sound of some confused would-be customer ringing the shop bell. Songbirds would just be birds, and the ticking of the clock would stop. Such a wonderful silence, yet Pinkie wanted more, or maybe it was less. What if I couldn't feel anything at all? As if she was an immaterial wisp floating through the air. Something was wrong. Something was wrong. Pinkie had never felt like this before. It was wrong that she could feel so right. Maybe Twilight could help. She's the expert on this sort of thing after all. But Twilight, she remembered, was studying the mirror pool. Wait, I knew that, didn't I? She shook her head. Everything was slipping away from her. She looked into the mirror again, trying to regain that sense of clarity from earlier in the morning. It didn't work. Twilight was gone, and somehow Pinkie felt that it was important. Something clicked for her. What if I'm a clone? But that didn't make sense at all. Twilight's watching paint dry test should have made sure that I was the real Pinkie Pie, right? Then again, I overheard that one Pinkie Pie who hadn't been sure if she was a clone or not either. Now that she thought about it, that test wasn't the most convincing method. Maybe she can invent a spell for it. With all the research she's been doing, it'd be really nice to know for sure. But that was so long ago, and even if she was a clone, it didn't explain why everything only started this morning. Twilight's there. If she accidentally did something to the pool itself, who knows? Pinkie looked at herself in the mirror, and she could imagine that she wasn't even there. Or maybe I'm just going crazy. Must You? By Twinkletail. Must you, darling? Pinkie Pie looked up from a bowl of cereal. She wasn't quite sure what she'd done to elicit such a reaction from her breakfast partner. But the great thing about the question posed to her was that it didn't necessarily mean something negative. Maybe Rarity was just curious. Must I what? Pinkie asked through a mouthful of ultra-frosted Frosty-O's. She didn't even have to look at Rarity's face to know what expression she wore, although she did anyway, since Rarity's face was very nice to look at, and quickly covered her mouth, swallowing its contents. Sorry, I know you don't like it when I talk with food in my mouth, but I didn't want to be rude and not answer your question, so I guess I was rude in a different way instead. Whoopsie! Rarity's expression softened, and she reached across the table to pat her partner's hoof. It was hard to stay annoyed at Pinkie. It's okay, dear, Rarity said. I'm certain I could have been patient enough to wait until you were done, but I appreciate the desire to not leave me in the lurch. Lurch is a funny word, Pinkie offered, grinning a tiny little grin as she perked back up. I guess it is, Rarity responded, almost unconsciously mirroring Pinkie's grin. We'll add it to the list then. Pinkie clapped her hooves eagerly as Rarity unrolled her scroll of funny words, sliding out of her chair so she could peer over Rarity's shoulder as she wrote this newest one down. Funny words were even funnier when written in Rarity's flawless penmanship. Something about the word tizzy displayed in such a flowery font tickled her in one of her favourite ways. Not her most favourite way though. Only Rarity was allowed to tickle her like that. And there we are, Rarity stated as she rolled the scroll up once more. Lurch, a lovely addition. Totally, Pinkie replied, holding one foreleg in the air. She beamed as Rarity immediately picked up her cue and gave her an enthusiastic high hoof. Then it was straight back to her chair, and she had left her breakfast unattended and undevoured for far too long. And as it would turn out, the devouring would have to wait even longer as a familiar thought swirled up in her little pink head. So, what must I? Pinkie asked. Pardon? Rarity asked before shaking her head quickly. Oh, I'd completely forgotten. Gosh, Rares, I'm usually the one that forgets things so quickly, Pinkie teased. Maybe I'm rubbing off on you more than I thought. Oh, more than you know, Rarity responded. I was distracted thinking about something you'd done the other day, while I was heading to the spa, and it wasn't until I noticed the little stares from the ponies on the street that I realised I'd been pronking just like you do. Pinkie Pie burst into laughter, to the surprise of no pony. The visual was so entertaining that she didn't even have time to comment on how pronking was also a funny word. Not that it would have mattered if she had. It was already on the list. I wish I could have seen that, Pinkie said between giggles, her mirth only amplified by the combination of blush and an embarrassed smile on Rarity's face. Well, I suppose I could demonstrate if it would please the lady, Rarity mused. She didn't even wait for a response. Waiting was entirely unnecessary when one knew the other well enough to know how she would respond. Her breakfast temporarily forgotten, Rarity rose to her hooves, perfectly primped and polished, almost in spite of what she was about to do, and began to bounce around the room. I believe it looks something like this, Rarity shouted as she rocketed past Pinkie, who was now in hysterics on the floor. Am I doing it right, darling? Is this a proper pronk? Pinkie made a feeble attempt at an answer, but it wasn't meant to be. Her usual loquaciousness caused words to flow like water from her muzzle, but this laughter was simply impermeable. A quartet of alabaster whoos landed at her side, and Rarity soon joined in the laughter as she hugged her silly pink partner. "Thank you for the approval, darling," Rarity said, giving Pinkie a kiss on the cheek. It was salty, but tears of laughter often did that to a cheek. "It means the world to me." The happy little sigh from Pinkie tugged at Rarity's heart, and the organ deftly fought off attacks from her brain, which was frantically trying to remind her that she was currently laying on a dirty floor. "You know I approve of just about everything you do," Pinkie said, the earlier uproarious laughter calming into a gentle giggle as she nuzzled her recently kissed cheek against Rarity's. "Just about everything?" Rarity asked, a coy grin crossing her face. "What might I have done that you disapprove of then?" "You made vanilla cupcakes the other day when I really wanted chocolate," Pinkie replied matter-of-factly. Rarity raised a brow, giving her partner a bemused smirk. "Oh, really?" Rarity replied. "And you didn't like the 7 of them that you ate?" "I liked them," Pinkie responded quickly. "I was just hoping for chocolate." "Well, it's good to know that my largest indiscretion against you was a mixing up of cupcake flavours," Rarity said. "You also snore," Pinkie told her. What? Rarity stammered, quickly rising to her hooves. "Pinkie, you snore as well." "I know," Pinkie said, opting to roll over onto her back rather than stand. "But I snore at a C, and yours is more of an E flat. And I guess that would be fine if we also had another pony snoring at a G, because that would make a good minor chord. But I didn't really think you'd be okay with inviting a third pony too." "You're annoyed that our snores don't harmonise," Rarity exclaimed. "I never said annoyed, silly," Pinkie insisted, crossing her forelegs over her chest. "You asked me what I didn't approve of, but it's way too small of a thing for me to get annoyed about." "I suppose that makes sense," Rarity responded. "It sure does," Pinkie said, launching herself up to a standing position in a matter that probably shouldn't have been physically possible for any pony that wasn't Pinkie Pie. "I love you too much to get annoyed by something really small that doesn't really mean anything in the long run." With that, the pink pony planted her rump on her chair and munched down another spoonful of cereal, stopping midway to look back at the love of her life. "So, what must I?" Rarity stared back at Pinkie. She was crunching her cereal so loudly yet again, the exact thing that caused her to pause earlier. For the briefest of moments, she considered bringing it back up. As she stared back into those baby blue eyes and thought about their conversation though, you know what? It doesn't mean anything in the long run. Wednesdays Are Sacred by Aragon. Mr. Cake was trying to get his baby daughter to kiss the silver dagger when someone opened the door to Sugar Cube Corner. Pumpkin Cake giggled. Mr. Cake hid the knife behind his back, choking. He was just a human after all, and humans weren't made for this. "Oh no," he moaned. "No, no, no!" And from the kitchen, which sat behind the counter, came his wife's voice. "What's wrong, dear?" Mrs. Cake said. "Please say it's not another monster." "Worse," Mr. Cake whispered back. "It's Pinkie Pie." Pinkie Pie waved at Mr. Cake, huge grin on her face. "Hi, Mr. Cake. Hello, Pumpkin." Pumpkin Cake waved back at Pinkie. Mr. Cake gripped the silver dagger hidden behind his back so hard it hurt. Mrs. Cake gasped. Pinkie Pie here already? But it was only 3:30. She still had to take the ice cream out of the freezer, and the apples for Sunset Shimmer's apple salad weren't ready yet. There was so much to do. But there was a demon horse writhing on the kitchen floor, trying to kill them all. "Oh dear!" Mrs. Cake looked at the demon horse. Do you mind? Oh, why am I even asking you? The demon horse was called a demon nicker. It had lizard-like scales, so sharp they cut the air and made a whistling sound. It was bound and gagged with a silver thread. Well, Mrs. Cake went to the fridge and took some apples out. I might as well start. The demon nicker moved its lips, but no sound came out. Mrs. Cake had seen Cherylee shove a fistful of silver cyanide into the demon nicker's mouth to burn its tongue. That's why they'd all survived. Demon nickers killed by speaking your name. Cherylee was in the hospital now. Her fingers would survive the stunt, but only barely. You really are dreadful, Mrs. Cake said. I don't understand why you monsters haunt these poor girls so much. They're so young. What have they done to you? The demon nicker said nothing. Mrs. Cake could see the silver threads burning into its skin. Principal Celestia and Nightlight had tied up the demon nicker, but they'd only managed because they'd had a lot of help from Vice Principal Luna, and Mare, and Big Macintosh, and of course Cherylee, who had risked her life and also her fingers, and Cranky Doodle, and Mrs. Harshwani, Cookie Crumbles, Windy Whistles, Shining Armour, Aloe and Lotus from the spa. Everyone who knew the girls got together every Wednesday and tried to help. They'd research the monsters and find ways to fight without magic, in secret so the girls wouldn't know. Because the adults often got hurt by doing this, and nobody wanted Pinkie and company to feel responsible, they made saving the world look so easy, even though they were so young. But of course, that was the whole point. Of course, Mr. Cake thought that one day he had to kill the monster. Only blessed knives could kill demon nickers, and baby kisses counted, since they were free of all sin. Was the day Pinkie Pie chose to arrive early. Pinkie was playing with Pumpkin Cake, but she talked to Mr. Cake. You know, she said, it's so weird monsters never attack on Wednesdays. Mr. Cake was still hiding the dagger behind his back. Oh? He managed to say. Yeah, monsters don't attack every day, but they can attack any day, right? Except Wednesdays. I wonder why. Pause. Mr. Cake? What? Oh. Mr. Cake shook his head. I don't know. I'd never noticed. Is that why you always come here on Wednesdays? Yeah, it's our day off. Well, that's good. Mr. Cake bit his lip. Pinkie Pie? He hesitated. Are you okay? Pinkie blinked and then looked at Mr. Cake. Huh? I mean, in general. He offered her a little smile. You're always so busy, you and your friends, saving the world and high school on top of that. And your part-time job here. I just worry it might be too much. Oh no! Pinkie's eyes went wide as plates. Mr. Cake, what are you saying? I shouldn't work here anymore? Please don't. What? No. Mr. Cake shook his head. Oh, dear me, not at all. We love having you in here, and the twins adore you. Isn't that right, Pumpkin? Pumpkin Cake made a noise. Pinkie giggled and tapped Pumpkin's nose. That's a yes, she said. That's a yes, Mr. Cake repeated. Then he looked at Pinkie. I was just asking because, well, we do worry about you. Oh! Pinkie smiled at him in a way she had that was sweeter than sugar. Thank you, Mr. Cake, but I'm fine. Saving the world is fun. I mean, it does get stressful sometimes, but I love my friends. Pinkie shot Mr. Cake some finger guns. So it's all fine. Mr. Cake frowned. I guess, isn't it a little bit intimidating though? Saving the world? Here, Pinkie stopped smiling. Well, sometimes Fluttershy gets a little scared. We're there for her. But when we get 2 or 3 threats a day in a row, She rubbed her arm. Sometimes it gets pretty bad. Silence. Then Pinkie bounced back to life. But, she said, we always win in the end, so it's all fine. Plus Wednesdays are always monster free, so we can relax then. It's a pretty sweet deal all in all. Mr. Cake nodded. So that helps? What? Wednesdays being a day without monsters? Oh yeah, Pinkie Pie nodded and grinned. A lot. And Mr. Cake grinned back. I'm so very glad to hear that, Pinkie Pie. You deserve it. He picked Pumpkin Cake up in his arms. Now, if you'll excuse me, it's nap time, and Pumpkin owes me a good night kiss. I'll be right back. Okie dokie! And Mr. Cake left, gripping the dagger and eyeing the demon. And he did what he had to do. And that day, Pinkie and her friends had a wonderful day. Wednesdays were great that way. Vanilla Cream Cake by Amethyst. Outside Applejack's barn were several tables with various cakes, cupcakes, and a moderately sized stack of gifts. Surrounding the tables were orange and pink balloons everywhere Applejack looked. Such an odd colour pairing, although Pinkie ain't exactly a normal Earth pony. Applejack smirked at the thought, and watched as a much taller Twilight Sparkle was feeling her hoof around Sugarbell's belly with Big Mac watching the two mares interact. Applejack felt her heart brightening with a glowing light inside of her as she took it all in. It had been almost 2 years since Equestria united against and defeated the Legion of Doom, and about 5 months since Sugarbell announced that she was expecting Big Mac's foal. Applejack glanced over at Rainbow Dash, who had her wing wrapped around Fluttershy, and expected that her new roommate was going to move out before long. Applejack smiled at the two Pegasus mares, and for her brother and his wife, knowing that even without a partner, Applejack knew that all of these ponies were here for her and her birthday. As she walked over to the fold-in table closest to her, Applejack looked at the biggest cake that Pinkie had brought, a simple vanilla cream cake with vanilla frosting, and a 2 and 5 candle together. Applejack heard some pony bounce up to her side and knew who it was from the smell of strawberries and cream. Hey, Pinkie? Applejack stammered. Is this my birthday cake? It sure is! Pinkie hopped up and down. Isn't it perfect? Yeah, I guess I just thought it'd be something more like an apple pie or cake. Applejack shrugged. Well, I did bring apple empanadas, apple fritters, caramel apples. Pinkie drifted off, and Applejack looked over and flinched at how wide Pinkie's pupils were, like Applejack was all that existed in that very moment. But this cake is one of my favourite cakes! It's a bestseller at the Sugar Cube Corner. Huh, I'd have thought you'd like something with 50 different candies on it. Applejack laughed a little, like an explosion of sugar enough to get you bouncing off the walls. Oh, don't get me wrong, those are pretty good too, Pinkie explained. And you'll try this cake soon enough, and I Pinkie promise that you'll love it. Walk with me? Oh, sure, why not, Sugar Cube? Applejack walked up the hill with Pinkie bouncing beside her and felt the sun shining brighter on the trees as her eyes went up and down, with each time Pinkie jumped towards the sky and landed back down on the grass. So, I heard Cheese Sandwich was back in town. Yeah, he is. Pinkie stopped bouncing up and down and gave a strange smile. We've been hanging out a bit. And do you see yourself with him? Applejack spoke again as soon as she saw Pinkie's smile fading. I figured as much. Don't get me wrong, he's really fun to hang out with, Pinkie insisted. But do you remember how we treated each other when we first met, competing to the point where I felt worthless as a party pony? Wait a second. He ain't going out of his way to make you feel worthless, is he? Applejack growled. No, not at all, Pinkie gasped. but I don't want to feel like I'm competing with my special sun pony in the talent that I cherish most. You saw what that did to me. Understand. Applejack nodded. What about Princess Skystar? You got along with her pretty well. She is really cute, Pinkie agreed, but she lives on Mount Aris. Plus, I have been thinking of some pony more different than me. Some pony more down to earth? Applejack suggested, and flinched when Pinkie jumped in the air and grinned from ear to ear. Yes, exactly, Pinkie exclaimed. Some pony that can show me that there's more to life than my parties, that sometimes beauty is in the simple parts of life. That does make sense, Applejack nodded. I swore that Rainbow Dash moved in to make a move, but I've been seeing her hanging out with Fluttershy more and more, which is fine, but would have been nice to have a mare friend to be part of my family. Family? Pinkie nodded, staring deep into Applejack's eyes as she clarified. Family is very important to me too. How have they been, by the way? Applejack asked. Your other sisters find their special sun ponies? No, they've been taking care of the farm still, Pinkie replied. Although I've wanted to move down there, there's so many more ponies to meet and talk to here, and I just don't want to see them just waste away, Applejack suggested, and noticed various strands of Pinkie's mane straightening as she slowly nodded her head. The farm pony felt her head come up blank with what to do in this situation, and so she came closer and wrapped her foreleg around Pinkie. It's okay, Pinkie. I'm not sure how to help them without taking them away from the rock farm, but we can visit them and figure something out. You mean that? Pinkie looked at Applejack, and their muzzles were centimetres apart as Applejack continued to hold Pinkie in an embrace. I do, Applejack whispered, and barely had time to gasp as Pinkie leaned forward, sealing the distance with a kiss that wasn't anything like Applejack had experienced before. All her life, it was just taking care of apples by doing this or that. Eat apple this or that. Everything was about apples. But Pinkie's words became crystal clear as Applejack tasted an entirely new flavour on her lips. A bright and sweet flavour, yet tame and simple at the same time. Applejack couldn't put her hoop on the exact kind of flavour until she had returned to the party. Her and Pinkie walking with their pelts pressed against one another as their friends rejoiced over the two mares getting together. Applejack then tried the cake and tasted the exact same taste. Sweet and simple.
I need you when you need me. What else more could someone need? You got a key and I've got a lock. Let's build a house upon a rock. Let's build a house upon a rock. And if that well runs dry, that'll never cross our minds. So bring on the aftershock. Let's build a house upon a rock. Let's build a house upon a rock.
Pretty and Pink by Silk Rose. Rarity was trotting towards Sugar Cube Corner on her way to ask Pinkie to model for her. She decided she was going to make a dress for Pinkie as a surprise. Her plan was to make the dress under the guise that it was for someone else, and then ask Pinkie out afterward. She would give her the dress they made together. She's had feelings for Pinkie for a little while now, so she was looking forward to this. She already had plans and ideas for the gown. It would, of course, be pink. She would make sure it brought out the beauty that she saw in the mare. After a short walk, Rarity arrived at Sugar Cube Corner. She was somewhat hesitant to knock. After this, there was no turning back. She gathered some confidence and decided to knock on the bakery's door. Not at all to Rarity's surprise, Mrs. Cake answered the door. "Hello? Is Pinkie Pie in?" Rarity asked. "Yes, dearie. Do you want to go see her?" "Certainly, darling." Mrs. Cake let Rarity inside and closed the door behind her. Rarity walked up the stairs to the upper part of the establishment, while Mrs. Cake went back into the kitchen. Once Rarity had ascended the stairs, she knocked on Pinkie's door. "Here goes nothing." Pinkie Pie answered the door a moment later and said, "Hey Rarity, what's up?" "Hello, darling. I was wondering if you could be my model for a particular dress?" Rarity asked. Pinkie smiled at her friend. "Sure, when?" "Right now, if it wouldn't be a bother." "Okay," Pinkie replied happily. Pinkie jumped out the door and closed it behind her. They walked down the steps. Once they reached the bottom, Pinkie called out, "Mrs. Cake, I'm going out." Mrs. Cake replied from the other room, "Okay, have fun." Rarity opened the front door with her magic. They walked through it and Rarity closed it behind them. They started walking to Carousel Boutique. "So, who's the client?" Pinkie asked. "You wouldn't know them. They're from Manhattan. Their coat is pink, so you would be the perfect model," Rarity said, looking nervous. "Are you sure?" Pinkie asked. "I know a lot of ponies." "Yes," Rarity said, hoping Pinkie would drop it. Rarity took a moment to admire Pinkie as she hopped beside her, none the aware of the feelings she had towards her. She looked at her bouncing pink curls, so adorable, her pink fluffy ears, so cute, her blue eyes, so beautiful. Her thoughts were interrupted when Pinkie asked, "How's your day going, Rarity?" "Good. And yours, darling?" "It's going great." "That's good," Rarity smiled. "Do you have any ideas of how the dress will look?" Pinkie asked cheerfully. "I have a few. We shall see how it goes. Thank you for doing this for me, Pinkie. It means a lot to me," Rarity replied. "No problem, Rarity. I'm glad to help," Pinkie said. Shortly after the conversation had ended, they arrived at Carousel Boutique. Rarity opened the front door with her magic and motioned for Pinkie to go first. "After you." Pinkie Pie walked through the door. Rarity soon followed after and shut the door behind them. "Would you like to eat or drink anything before we get started?" Rarity asked. "Do you have any cupcakes?" Pinkie inquired. "No. How about cake? I've got some left over from a party Sweetie Belle had the other day." "Sure, I love cake," Pinkie chirped. "Let's go to the kitchen and I'll get it out for us," Rarity said, trotting to the kitchen, Pinkie soon following her. Once they were there, Pinkie sat down at the kitchen table while Rarity got the food out. "Would you like some milk with that?" Rarity asked. Pinkie nodded. "Yes." Rarity levitated the cake over the table and cut 2 pieces and put them on their plates. She put the cake back and got the milk from the fridge and poured them each a glass. "Here you are, darling," Rarity said as she laid the plate of cake and glass of milk in front of her crush, then laying hers in front of herself. "Thank you, Rarity," Pinkie said as she started munching on her cake. "It's no problem," Rarity replied. Rarity looked over at Pinkie and couldn't believe her eyes. How on earth does that mare look so cute doing something as simple as eating? Rarity thought. Then started eating to hide her blush. They sat quietly eating their cake and drinking their milk. Once they were done, Rarity cleaned up the dishes. "Are you ready, darling?" Rarity asked. "Yes," Pinkie said. Rarity led Pinkie to a work area and said, "Get on the stand and we can begin." Pinkie got up on the stand so Rarity could do her work. Rarity floated over her red work glasses and placed them on her snout. "Why do you have to wear those while you work? You are too cute already," Pinkie thought, and turned her head to hide her blush. "Pinkie, I need you to look at me so I can make this dress," Rarity said. "Oh, shoot, hopefully she doesn't notice," Pinkie thought, reluctantly turning her head to face Rarity. "That's better, thank you, darling," Rarity said. "Good, she doesn't seem to have noticed." Pinkie looked at Rarity. She was levitating different shades of pink fabric above Pinkie's coat. "You could do this, Pinkie. All you have to do is stand here while the mere you have a crush on is a mere foot away, unknowingly being cute," Pinkie thought, gulping. Rarity had chosen the main fabric for the dress while Pinkie was thinking and was cutting it in the shape of the main dress layer. Once Rarity had finished cutting it, she laid it on Pinkie's back and started staring at Pinkie. "Why is she staring at me like that? That doesn't look like a I'm making a dress kind of look," Pinkie thought. Rarity stopped staring and floated a sizable piece of fabric in front of her face for a few seconds. When she moved it away, Pinkie could notice the barest hint of a blush on Rarity's cheeks. "Why is she hiding her face? What's going on?" Pinkie wondered. Rarity moved the fabric around Pinkie's back as to level it out. Pinkie stopped paying attention to what Rarity was doing, lost in her thoughts. "How long will this take? I don't know how long I can last. I need to tell her. Yeah, I'll do it after we're done making the dress. I can't hide my feelings any longer." "There," Rarity said. "It looks absolutely beautiful." "And so do you," she thought. The dress was pink with 2 layers, one going to within an inch of the floor and 2 going halfway down the dress. It had light blue stitching about an inch from the bottom of each layer that ran along the dress. Going from one side to the other on her chest was a darker pink ribbon with a light blue bow in the centre. Rarity led Pinkie over to a mirror so she could see her work. "Rarity, it looks amazing! I'm sure whoever gets it will love it," Pinkie said happily. "Well, there is something I wanted to ask you," Rarity said, fidgeting a bit. "Oh, there's something I want to ask you too. Can I go first?" Pinkie asked. "Sure," Rarity replied. What else could she want to ask me at a time like this? Rarity thought. "Would you like to go out with me?" Pinkie asked, looking nervous. Rarity stood for half a second. Did she just ask me out? "Yes," Rarity answered, leaning forward to hug Pinkie in a tight hug. Pinkie returned the hug. "I was actually about to ask you the same thing, believe it or not," Rarity said, pulling away from the hug with a slight blush on her face. "Wow, that's amazing," Pinkie said with a giant smile on her face. "The dress is yours. There never was a client. I made them up. I'm sorry I lied. I just wanted to surprise you with a dress," Rarity said. Pinkie's mouth hung open for a second. Then she closed it and started tearing up. "Oh, thank you, Rarity. You're the best." She wrapped Rarity in a tight hug. They pulled away from the hug and stared into each other's eyes, not speaking. They slowly moved their heads closer until their lips met. They held the kiss for a long while, both parties releasing weeks of pent-up lust and passion into the kiss. Once they were done, they leaned back and just stared at each other for a moment. "Hey, you know what this calls for?" Pinkie asked with a big smile on her face. Rarity gulped and said, "A party?" Oh god, oh frick, I'm back on my bullshit and just in time for the May pairing contest. This title doesn't feel long enough. That's what she said. Though we, as a society, really ought to stop shaming people for their pool noodle size. By Super Trampoline. A super trampoline story with no embedded links or pictures. That is a super powerful smell. Smells good. I finally done editing my ladyship touchdown. Happy, how is it like Steph Curry? Precisely like Steph Curry. How spicy? Yeah, this one is one of the things I be. Okay, so you know the drill. I'm going to write a really dumb story and you're going to read it and maybe you downvote it or maybe you upvote it. I don't know, but the point is, you know full and well what you're getting into here. So don't come complaining to me in the comments section like a little bitch, unless you're Winona. Because she literally is a little bitch. Haha, get it? She's a small female dog. So in this story, Tempest Shadow and Pinkie Pie are going to fuck shit up together. They could fuck each other, but I don't think I want to try to keep this teen rated. Although, to be fair, I've gotten away with some pretty questionable things while keeping to the teen rating in other stories like the Princess Molly one and the Starlight and Trixie Do the Kiss one. Both of which I'm too lazy to link because I'm off my ADHD meds because I'm out of them until tomorrow, so I'm going through withdrawals, which basically means I'm really fucking tired and lethargic. Like I took a 3-hour nap earlier today. Anyway, one day, Ponks was like, "You, Tempura, by the way, that's your new nickname. Sorry, not sorry, can I go down on you?" And Tempest Shadow was like, "Yo, what the fuck? I know you're all about free love, but I'm sort of not really, but yeah, really look, it's complicated, we're both complicated mares, dating Twilight." Author's note. Someday when I have 300 or 400 or 500 to burn, I really want to commission Aragon to basically write Resting Witch Face, but for Twilight and Tempest instead of Glim Glam and Trixie. But I still want them to also show up too as secondary characters, and I want it to be a teen rated with the sex and profanity tags instead, so Aragon can use more of his fanatic dirty humour. Oh, now that my ban is over, I should see if he has published any more of his fantastic comics. Seriously, check out his comic blog posts if you haven't. He is really great at writing them. So Pinkie Pie was like, for sure, I got you fam. And I'll be your wingman too. Anyway, Tempsy, when you invaded Equestria, why didn't you use any actual gunpowder like my cannons do? And Tempest was like, because it's a fucking PG movie for a TV-Y show. The Storm King and eyes action in reality would probably have killed dozens if not hundreds or even thousands of creatures, and I'd be considered a war criminal, but because this is magical happy fantasy land, now I get to snog the de facto ruler of this nation instead of get executed or spend the rest of my life in unsexy jail. Pinkie Pie was like, okay, I get that, but you know I actually have gunpowder because I have fucking party cannons. Except this is Pinkie Pie logic, so I don't end up with severe burns every time I fire one. And also firing one into someone's face doesn't instantly kill them. Anyway, I have a fuck ton of explosives, and Trixie does too, but this is for the May pairings contest, so she's not going to show up in this story. Anyway, do you want to blow up shit in the desert? Hempfest was like, yeah, sure, that sounds fun. I can get to know you more, weird pink thing. So they skated through a wormhole in Scott Pilgrim's brain, which the Scott Pilgrim comic book series elaborates so much on more than the movie. Anyway, they did that to save time and ended up in some desert in Equestria. I don't fucking know which one. There are like 3 or 4 deserts on the official map of Equestria, so like take your pick, my dude or dudette, or whatever the non-binary form of that word is. So Pinkie grabbed from her bag of holding, scratch that, mane, a stick of dynamite because of course she did. And she was like, yo, Alfred Nobel invited this shit and it's fucking fetch. You can blow stuff up with it and it's used for blasting tunnels for like rail construction and also sexy damsel in distress artwork on image fap scratch that derpy buru. Anywho, you want to try it? And Temperate Biome was like, fuck me, what the fuck am I getting into? But yeah, sure, you got a match or something? And then Ponk was like, dude, fucking use your horn like a natural lighter. Like if you were at a boomer rock concert, you would just wave it around during the power ballad instead of a real lightsaber. Or do what all the kids are doing, just use their fucking phone screens. And Fizzy Wizzy was like, okay, so I know you don't usually think about things like safety, but what do I do after I light it? Punkers was like, oh yeah, no, that's a valid question, and you fucking run? Or I mean, I think you can kick it? I know you're really good at kicking things based on the action sequence in My Little Pony, the movie where you froze all the princesses in stone, because by the 8th season or 7th season or whatever My Little Pony the movie came out, there were way too many OP, overpowered, not original poster, characters, and you needed to easily nerf a bunch of them. I mean, Discord doesn't even fucking show up, save a brief end credits cameo, because he's a fucking reality warper. Just like Luna doesn't show up in the season 2 finale. Thanks to the magic of fanfiction, however, several people have written about why Discord wasn't around during My Little Pony the movie, but enough about that. You can definitely try kicking the dynamite. I don't think it will immediately explode or anything, but just to be safe, it really probably is better to just throw it. Apparently you're good at throwing things too, because I heard through the rumour mill that you threw out Twilight's back last week during sex. I'm really happy for you two, by the way. I absolutely love the way her face lights up when she's talking about you, or light it and run away. I mean, I think the fuse burns for a while, but also we use a much longer fuse than the ones that show up in cartoons, which is ironic given that we're cartoon characters. Seriously, the fuse is like 8 feet long. Then Tempest was like, okay, cool. And she lit it with her sparky horn, and then she and Pinkie ran back and hid behind a flimsy plywood facade of an American Wild West building like you see in Blazing Saddles, which is an excellent movie I watched on an airplane flight once. And goddess damn did that shit fucking blow up. Boom went the dynamite and it exploded and left a little crater in the desert, and it was cool as fuck. And Tebba's shadow was like, yo Pinkie, you got any more of this stuff? And Pinkie Pie, being fucking Pinkie Pie, had like a whole stack of 6 sticks arranged in a little pyramid. So then they lit the fuse on that cornucopia of kaboom and ran, and when it exploded it was an even bigger boom, which a few local seismographs even picked up. And Tempest was like, holy fuckballs, this makes me wet. Pinkie, I retracted what I said earlier. Please go down on me. So Pinkie Pie ate out Tempest's shadow in the desert for approximately 40 minutes, and Tempest came 3.5 times. If I explained the half part, I think it would bump the story's rating up to mature. So you'll just have to take my word and use your imagination, which, I mean, you have to do anyways when it comes to Pinkie Pie. shagging anybody, including you, on account of her not being real, which fucking sucks. Because trust me, I would totally fuck Pinkie Pie. Both of which I'm too lazy to link because I'm off my ADHD meds because I'm out of them until tomorrow, so I'm going to... But I still want them to also show up. But I still want them to also show up too as secondary characters, and I want it to be a teen rated. But I still want them to show. And Tempest was like, because it's a fucking PG movie for a TV/Y show. Because it's a fucking PG movie for a TV-Y show. The Storm King and Eyes on Image Fat Scratch That Derpy Buru. Pinkie Pie's No-Nos by Gapti. Twilight galloped away from the mob chasing her. She knew that the ponies had a strong group mentality, but what was currently going on took it to the next level. Those ponies in black or red robes were everywhere. No matter the street or corner she turned, there was another group of them seeing and chasing after her. She could have tried a new teleportation spell, but she had no idea where she should be teleporting to begin with. The Unbeliever has emerged! Cutie Mark Crusaders after the book nerd! Foals too! Whatever was going on, it had affected almost every pony in Ponyville. Twilight weaved left, then right, as the crowd closed in, and she jumped over the 3 fillies and continued galloping. At last she saw some pony not in a robe waving at her from a window. She turned in that direction and ran through the open door, which the pony quickly closed after her. Twilight splayed on the ground, breathing heavily, hoping her lungs would stop feeling like they were on fire. A couple of breaths later, she finally saw the cup of water being hooved to her. Twilight grasped it with her magic. At the last gulp, she looked at the other pony and saw that it was Mare. "What is going on?" Twilight asked. "Why is every pony suddenly in robes and chasing after me?" "I don't know, but..." "They even caught Fluttershy and Rarity. I don't want to imagine what they did to them. Why is Rainbow on their side?" "I think we need to do something. Is this a magic spell? I need to go back to the library to research it." "Twilight Sparkle, could you listen to me for 1 second? Mare interrupted her, and after Twilight remained silent, continued speaking. "I know you are new here, so you might not know it yet, but if anything happens here, we first need to check if a certain Mare was the reason for this." "A certain Mare?" Twilight blinked. "Who do you..." She paused, then took a deep breath. "Do you mean Pinkie Pie? I mean, she is weird in her way, but this could be her fault, right?" "You haven't seen the half of it," Mare said ominously, trotted to another room and went to a painting on the wall. She pushed it to the side, revealing a solid steel door with a rotary lock. She spun the dial left and right, and the safe clicked open. Twilight peeked inside, and to her consternation, saw nothing but a couple of cupcakes. The Mare took one and covered the safe again, then placed the cupcake on a table. Suddenly, a pink pony emerged from a nearby vase. She jumped to the table, and after "Oh, a cupcake!" consumed the pastry in one bite. "Pinkie Pie, explain!" Mare said with a threatening voice. "Don't you know, silly? Whenever you put a cupcake on this table..." "You know exactly what I'm talking about. Why is every pony in robes and chasing after other ponies?" "Oh, you mean that? Why didn't you say it in the first place?" Pinkie grinned widely. "See, I wanted to throw a party, but no one goes to my parties if I don't have a reason to have a party. And in a party, just because no one is interested, so I had to come up with a reason, and my first idea was to take one pony from another town and make them voluntarily move into Ponyville. But then I remembered that you would count it as pony napping, So I had to come up with another reason. And then I saw a bucket lying on the ground, and so I had the idea to start a bucket cult, so I could then throw a new cult party. And that's why every pony is now recruiting new members. With every word, Twilight was getting more and more dumbfounded. By the end of the tirade, she had to sit down to digest what Pinkie was saying. It really was all her fault. All of the scares and running away from ponies was because Pinkie wanted to throw a party? Twilight knew that Pinkie Pie was crazy, but this took it to another extreme. However, Mare was less surprised hearing that and only sighed in reply. Seriously? What? You can join the cult too, and then we will have a super duper amazing new cult party at our super duper secret meeting place. You let your members catch other ponies in town and force them to join your cult? Well, duh! How else can I get new members for my cult? Are you interested in joining it? Do you know how amazing the bucket is? It can do so many things you can't even imagine. Pinkie Pie! Mare interrupted her. What are your rules about pony napping? Hey, the rules say that I am not allowed to do it, not that others can't do it for me. Looks like we have to add another rule to the list then, and went to the book to pick it up. Ugh, meanie! I told you not to call me that. What rules? Twilight asked in between, having no idea what rules they were talking about. A bunch of no-nos from me, Pinkie Pie scoffed, because she can't understand how to have fun. Pinkie, the mare groaned, those rules are made specifically for you because otherwise you would harm others. You would cause all kinds of property damage and stress to ponies. Do you really think any pony besides you would enjoy that? Mare put the book down on the table Pinkie was still sitting on. On its cover stood, in hoof-written letters, things Pinkie Pie isn't allowed to do. No, they wouldn't, Pinkie Pie muttered. I want ponies to have fun, which is why we need these rules. The mare tried to smile at the now deflated pink mare. Does every pony have a personal list of rules? Twilight asked, curiously. No, only for me. Blech. Pinkie let her tongue stick out and jumped off the table. Mare turned to the last written page and took a feather and ink. See, we're already at rule number 37. She thought for a second before starting to write. 37. Pinkie Pie is not allowed to start a cult just to make a cult party. Isn't that too specific? Twilight asked. Pinkie, would you start a cult for any other reason? Of course not. Why should I? Forming a cult. Stop talking and dissolve this bucket cult now before any pony else gets harmed. On it! Pinkie Pie jumped into the vase she had emerged from. Twilight was around her long enough to not think about that at least. Mare? Twilight asked. Yes, Twilight. May I take a look at that list? Of course. I need a warm drink to calm down. I'll be right back. The mare left the unicorn alone in the room with the book, which Twilight started to read from the very beginning. These were definitely not the usual rules one could find in law books. Even beginning from the first one, when the mare returned, Twilight blurted out, "Why is Pinkie Pie not allowed to drink coffee?" As soon as she asked, she knew why. Pinkie Pie was already way too hyperactive. Her consuming a drink, making sure she gets even more energy, would only result in a catastrophe. Yet, seeing the mare's reaction surprised her. Mare stood still, not moving a single muscle in her body, only her mouth slowly opening wider and wider. Her eyes were also wide open, staring in the emptiness in shock. Calling her name or even touching her didn't release her from her motionlessness. And soon Twilight saw drops of sweat dripping from her body. Before Twilight could ask anything, Mare screamed. Twilight closed her eyes with her hooves and called for her to stop, but it went on for several minutes. Finally, the Earth Pony's screams broke into a coughing fit. Mare, please calm down, Twilight yelled. Mare kept coughing, but seemed to have calmed down from the shock she just went through. Sorry, let's not talk about what happened. But we didn't know what would have happened. We shouldn't have given her that drink. Her left eye blinked repeatedly. Before the mayor could return to a shocked state, Twilight quickly changed the topic. What about Rule 6? About Pinkie not being allowed to change the law books? This? Oh, I remember it as if it was yesterday. I heard some shuffling in this room, and when I entered I saw Pinkie Pie writing in the city's law book. She wanted to make sweets a right for every pony, which may seem innocent, but it will only lead to a huge financial crisis, not even speaking about the health issues it will cause. Later on, she even tried to write in this book, and now that's forbidden for her too. I see. This seems pretty harmless compared to the other rules. It's the only thing controlling her, and my sanity. Mare took a long sip from her tea. You would have to see the chaos she caused in the first month she came over. Wait, Twilight pointed at Rule 11. Pinkie was the one who changed Princess Celestia's uniform to a rabbit costume? Yes, I have no idea why Celestia didn't punish her, but seeing her in that costume, you have no idea how scared I was. In hindsight, I now know that I wasn't at all guilty for Pinkie's action and wouldn't get any punishment. Celestia only wanted to make sure that that rule would be written out too. So she knew Pinkie Pie before I knew Pinkie? Twilight thought out loud. She shook her head and continued to Rule 12, which stated that Pinkie was not allowed to put sleeping pills in Celestia's drink to keep the party rocking. Yes, I had several visits by the Highness regarding her. I think the princess is in her own way enjoying Pinkie's weirdness. She is always in a good mood whenever that pink mare does something again. Interesting. Twilight took a mental note to ask her teacher more about Pinkie and these incidents. Suddenly, some pony knocked on the door. A split second later, Pinkie Pie entered the room. Hi, it's me again. Look, I know I am not supposed to start a cult and all that, and I still didn't get to make the party I wanted, so I wanted to enroll in a new religion called the Bucketeers. We believe in the bucket being the answer to all questions of the universe, and our goal is that every pony should have a bucket. Oh, Twilight, are you interested in joining our new religion? Tonight we will have a super duper founding of the Bucketeers party. Twilight stared at Mare, who plumped down and was looking dumbfounded at Pinkie Pie. Then she stood up and went straight to the book, opening to the last rule. 37. Pinkie Pie is not allowed to start a cult just to make a cult party. A. This also includes starting a new religion. There is nothing better in a calm morning with sunshine and birds singing outside. Truly better than being chased by manipulated ponies into a bucket cult. There was no party after that, sadly, for Pinkie Pie, but for Twilight it was the best. She preferred the quietness in the morning where she could finish her checklist. Suddenly, the door opened and Pinkie Pie entered the room. Hi Twilight! Look, I found a new book and I'm sure that you will like it. Can I read it for you? I'm so excited to hear what you will think about it. Of course, Twilight beamed. Let me just sit down and make the tea for us. Pinkie Pie sat down, put the book on the table, and once the tea was served, read loudly for Twilight to hear. A Compinklation, written by best fan shipper ever. The day started normally as Twilight was going to visit Rainbow Dash. "38. Pinkie Pie is not allowed to read Compinklation to anybody." Pinkie Pie is an eldritch abomination by Pony Amorous. Twilight opened her eyes, feeling dizzy and slightly nauseated. She was staring at her bedroom wall, which seemed to have developed several alarming new cracks recently. What was far more alarming, however, was the fact that she couldn't remember how she had gotten there. She tried to remember what she had done after waking up that morning, but came up blank. Turning around, she noticed an unfamiliar looking journal lying on the floor. Scrawled across the cover were the words, "Urgent! Read!" in her own writing. Slowly, Twilight levitated the mysterious journal over to the side of her bed, where she took a seat and opened to the first page. Research notes on Pinkie sense and related phenomena. Property of Twilight Sparkle. Day 1. Today I have resolved to continue investigation into the mysterious Pinkie sense. I'm ashamed to admit that I was formerly adamant in denying its existence, even in the face of mounting experimental evidence. I let my pet hypothesis blind me to empirical results. As a scientist, I should have known better. Worse still, when I finally accepted the phenomenon as real, I neglected to do any follow-up research. Such a fascinating phenomenon, with untold implications for all fields of magic as we know them, and I simply let it drop. The day a rationalist stops chasing their curiosity, stops inquiring about the world around them, that is the day they are truly dead. Today, I vow to scientifically investigate as much as I am able into the possible mechanisms behind Pinkie sense. Summary. Pinkie sense refers to the collection of physiological responses exhibited by subject Pinkimina Diane Pie that appear to predict the occurrence of various general events, falling objects, opening doors, etc. In the immediate future, as Pinkie sense obviously violates causality, books on time magic from the Star Swirl the Bearded section of the archives should be consulted for preliminary research, as well as any books on the expression of Earth Pony magic, in addition to interview the observation of the subject. Initial controlled experiments should focus on determining the maximum spatial and chronological ranges. I propose having my assistant dropping objects at randomized times and distances from the subject while I observe for physiological clues. The experiment will be double-blind, as the drop schedule will remain unknown to me or the subject until it is compared with my notes after the experiment. Day 7. Progress has been frustratingly slow. The archives provided no useful information that would help with my investigation. I had briefly theorized that the occurrence of a triggering event causes some part of the body to emit tachyons that are then detected somehow by Pinkie in the past, resulting in the physiological responses. One or more organs must act as some kind of transmitter/receiver. I would set to work calibrating a spell to try and detect tachyons, but I have not been able to reliably trigger the phenomenon. Attempts to recreate conditions in the laboratory completely failed. Not a single positive result was observed. If reactions are only triggered by genuinely accidental events, experimentation will be very difficult, though perhaps not impossible. It also raises another question as to how intent could possibly be detected. When asked why she thought the experiment had failed, Pinkie said, "Well, duh, because then it wouldn't be funny." I ignored the statement at the time, but now I think I should follow up and ask her exactly what she meant by that. Day 9. I talked with Pinkie again and asked her about her previous statement and why her Pinkie sense only seemed to activate arbitrarily. She claimed that it would only happen when someone watching would find it funny. I asked if she meant some pony in particular, but she said it had to be one of them, and proceeded to stare at a wall for several seconds. When I asked what she was looking at, she said, "The fourth wall." I'm not sure what to make of any of this, but it's probably just Pinkie being Pinkie. Day 30. Something is very wrong. There is some kind of force that doesn't want me to continue this investigation and is affecting my thinking. Looking back at my previous entry, I'm shocked. Just Pinkie being Pinkie? That's not an acceptable answer. not like me at all, and yet it has become typical. Whenever I notice a small problem or inconsistency, I feel a small pressure on my mind, a compulsion to turn away from the cognitive dissonance and think about something else. At first I thought I was just being lazy, but it has become too common lately, and I've noticed its effect on others as well, when Pinkie somehow arrives at a destination before Rainbow Dash does, even when flying full speed. Even Dash dismisses it as just Pinkie being Pinkie. It was almost 3 weeks ago when I refused to let my mind be turned aside one night. I fell asleep, and the next morning I'd completely forgotten all about my research. It is only now, while I fortuitously found this journal again, that my memories came flooding back to me. I'm starting to work immediately on possible countermeasures to mind-affecting magic. In the meantime, it is very much possible that I will continue to forget each night. I have added the large text to the cover of this journal and will leave it nearby where I will be forced to see it in the morning. In addition, I have added all the security and protection spells I can think of, in case this force has physical agents that would steal or destroy this journal. Day 32. Success! An hour ago, I managed to devise a counterspell to perform on myself that should protect me from this unseen manipulation. Already, I can feel my thinking getting clearer, sharper. It's like I've been under the effect of some drug that is slowly clearing out of my system. I didn't even know my perception had been dulled until now. I tried to isolate the source of the malicious magic, but it seems to be coming from everywhere at once, as if it's an integral part of the environment. I think it permeates all of Equestria. I predict that I should be fully free of its influence by the end of the day. I nervously anticipate what I will learn. I have also enchanted this journal to recast the spell on myself when I touch it in case of another lapse. Day 33. I don't know what Pinkie is, but that thing is not a pony. I can't believe the things I've never noticed before. That thing called Pinkie can teleport, not the spatial blinking that I do. She just literally appears in a different place. I have also seen her popping down from above when there was nothing to hold onto. It wouldn't even be right to say she was levitating. She was just there. Even more disturbing is her ability to pop out of spaces she couldn't possibly fit into. Flower pots, mailboxes. I even once saw her inside a mirror. I saw it before. I saw Pinkie's head and I saw the flower pot, but somehow I just didn't see them together. My eyes picked up the image, but my brain never noticed that what I was seeing was impossible. She seems to twist reality wherever she goes. It even offsets other ponies. Pinkie's singing was always considered just another one of her quirks. No pony ever considered where her music was coming from. However, this pales in comparison to the fact that just last week, the entire town, including myself, participated in a giant impromptu musical number. There was music from no visible source. Every pony knew the words and was perfectly on cue, and no pony ever acknowledged that it had happened afterward. Looking back, that wasn't even the first time that had happened. How long have we been breaking out into song? Day 34. I can barely keep a grip on my quill as I write this after what I saw today. I decided to go see it today. That ever-smiling thing that pretends to be a pony. I found it staring at what it called the fourth wall again. I asked it what it was looking at, and it simply said, "The audience." I looked at the blank wall it was staring at and thought I could almost see something. Focusing harder, I saw a small flicker. It wasn't just the wall, it was the air in front of and around it. It was the entire direction that seemed to become semi-transparent. For a second I could see shadows moving across the surface. Strange bipedal shapes with outlines that seemed to be clothing were barely visible. Suddenly, for the briefest of moments, I could see them clearly. Eyes, innumerable alien eyes staring back into my own. I screamed and ran from the building, not stopping until I was home. I've only now been able to compose myself enough to write these words. I can't ignore what I've seen, what I can remember with clarity now. The audience, the knowledge that my world is some kind of show to another. Though surprising to learn, isn't quite as disturbing as one would expect. If infinite multiverse theory is true, it should be expected that some universes would perfectly match the fictions of others. There would be a universe where events of the Daring Do series were reality, and it would be perfectly real to them. Even those monsters were probably fiction of some other universe. No, what disturbs me is that such a universe should still have internally consistent laws. That thing called Pinkie still presents a problem, unless... The text ended suddenly. Twilight had stopped writing when she had realized the truth. It was the same conclusion she was reaching again at exactly the same spot as she threw the journal to the ground in horror. The truth was, it was all a big joke. The universe wasn't rational. There were no consistent and immutable laws. Science didn't actually work. It only appeared to work up to a point. Her world had been created with some cartoonish imitation of actual natural laws, and Pinkie was the wink and nod to the audience to remind them that it shouldn't be taken too seriously. The life work of every academic in all of history had been a cruel joke. They had dedicated their lives to understanding the natural world and preserving the knowledge for the future. What was the point of it all really came down to what was entertaining. She thought back to the years she had spent studying astronomy, magic, every other field of science. It had all been a lie, and beings in another universe were laughing at her adorably naive attempts to understand the world around her. Twilight turned and slammed a hoof into the nearby wall, adding another crack to its surface. The world around her began to spin. It was too much to handle. She could feel her sanity slipping away. Soon she would be a gibbering pile on the floor. If only she could go back to before she knew what she knew. Back to having fun with her friends and studying magic and friendship. A desperate idea crossed her mind. She could wipe her memory. Purge everything she read in the accursed journal. But she had to do it now, while she still clung to enough of her sanity to cast the spell. Closing her eyes and summoning magic to her horn, everything flashed white. Twilight opened her eyes, feeling dizzy and slightly nauseated. She was staring at her bedroom wall, which seemed to have developed several alarming new cracks recently. What was far more alarming, however, was the fact that she couldn't remember how she had gotten there. Pinkie Meets a Sky God by The Psychopath. Sugar Cube Corner was empty of every pony except its resident party mare occupying its kitchen. Utensils and ingredients were all over the place, creating a nasty mess. A lot of scrolls and pieces of paper caked in cake batter were strewn on the tables and floors, as though the place had been ripped apart. Pinkie paced around, pulling out a dozen standard cupcakes from the oven and covering them with different icing recipes. Every taste was followed up by a no. The pink pony swept the cupcakes down her gullet and tapped the counter several times with her forelegs, making flour bounce around. No, these are all bad. They're not good enough for Ponyville's super duper ultra mega anniversary. The party pony froze. Ebony? Blue Ruby? She pressed a hoof into her muzzle and stayed there, thinking. No, I need to focus. She paced about the kitchen, and stumbled over a rolling pin, causing her to roll outside. "Ow!" she complained. Sitting in the dirt under the sunny sky, Pinkie had an epiphany. She remembered going to Cloudsdale with her friends. The clouds were so soft and fluffy. She needed to figure out how to make them naturally, so no factory. The pink pony sat upright and started getting the old cogs in her head grinded. She needed to take a balloon and float to the top. All the way to the top. The toppity top that ever topped. There she would find the cleanest, purest clouds to take samples from to make the best icing and whipped cream. The perfect idea. Nothing could go wrong! Pinkie hurried back into Sugar Cube Corner and pulled out an air balloon and basket and placed some glass jars into her mane. She was ready to depart, not one to let something like a deflated balloon get her down. The party pony unfurled it onto the ground, much to the gathering curiosity of the passers-by. The yellow cloth awaited to inflate and take its cargo aloft. The pink pony stepped in the basket, held the base of the hot air balloon up, licked her lips, and then screamed as loud as she could, startling the ponies near her. Her vehicle instantly inflated and was ready to take off. "To the clouds!" Pinkie shouted. The ballasts were detached and up she went. She almost hit several Pegasi on her way up, apologising for the mistake but not having the time to explain herself. The clouds every pony could see from the ground weren't good enough, even she knew that, so the pink pony went ever higher in the sky until she was surrounded by white cotton from every direction. Pinkie tasted the clouds here and shivered. Too bitter and cold. Higher I go! The next level of clouds was in a raging storm, but Pinkie had the fortunate luck of being within its eye. She looked around, seeing the black clouds illuminated by the lightning coursing through them like a pack of timber wolves. Even the howling winds remind Pinkie of those strange creatures. What piece should I grab and where from? Pinkie wondered. She sneezed when she looked in the direction of a thundercloud with a glowing yellow section. There! The balloon drifted towards the pony's target, allowing her to swipe a piece when she was finally in range. Alrighty! Taste test! Pinkie sang. She took a bite and was immediately electrocuted. She coughed when the electricity had been fully expended and shook the cloud off her hoof. Ew! Too spicy! She looked up and frowned. How much higher? The pony pulled up her sleeves and ascended ever higher. This time she was in a white, freezing space. Luckily she came prepared and pulled out some warm clothes from her tail. Toasty, she mused to herself. Frost was already starting to form on the balloon and its basket, but it seemed prepared to stay in the air no matter what. The pink pony was witness to a sparkling wasteland of cotton mountains that were freezing to the touch. Pinkie was hesitant to grab a piece, but she stoked her confidence and reached out to take a piece. Ah! Brain freeze! The pony shouted after taking a taste. She was about to throw the cloud but held herself when an idea crossed her mind. She looked from side to side, suspicious of any potential watchers, and slowly took a jar out of her head, placed the cloud in it, then re-hid the jar. I'll save that one for some super duper ice cream, she whispered to herself. Without losing her expression, the mare slowly ascended once again and broke through the white clouds. This time, however, it took her several minutes to get through the white masses, and when she emerged, there was nothing left above her head. Instead, she was greeted by an infinite waving sea of white beneath her, and the infinite space above. Beautiful lights and colours converged into what Twilight called a nebula to the left of Pinkie's vision. Several shooting stars came and went almost at the same time whenever Pinkie blinked, and several stars of varying brightness, colour and intensity kept her sky still as bright and as illuminated as Celestia's immense star in the distance. Ooh, space! Pinkie revelled. I wonder if the stars are edible. She rubbed her chin with her mane. Didn't I see something about edible planets in a black and white comic book somewhere? She smiled and shrugged it off. Oh well. The basket dropped on its own and landed on the strange cloudy surface, surprising its occupant. Hesitant, she chucked a small stone that had taken a trip with her in the basket and watched it roll on the cloudy surface without falling through. Bums away! The mare shouted as she leapt out of the basket. Pinkie ended up face planting into the clouds, then sinking ever so slightly into the soft mass. She shook her head and looked down at the white fluff. This was it! The final chance to have the perfect icing and whipped cream recipes. The pony buried her face into the clouds and ripped out a chunk to chew. Her face brightened up and her eyes sparkled with every chew. But, always a but. It was really soft and fluffy, almost like there was no weight to the cloud, but it was lacking something. Oh, come on, the pony lamented. She took another scoop and looked at it. If I can't find something else, then this could work, she thought aloud. There has to be a better bunch of fluffy clouds. She sneezed again. Right there, a few hoof steps from where she lied down, was a small tube-like cloud floating above the infinite white sea. It was a purer white than anything the mare had ever seen. That had to be it! Excited, she galloped towards the tube, but she wasn't making any distance. She pushed herself harder and harder, but still she couldn't get closer to the tube. What's going on? She complained loudly.
It can talk?
A voice boomed from everywhere and nowhere at once.
I didn't know shapes capable of speech.
Who was that? Pinkie asked aloud. Are you the one keeping me from that cloud there? She asked. The pony reached out and tried to stretch herself to the tube, but to no avail. No fair! I almost had it!
And why do you seek to take from me my most prized creation?
Oh, it's a prized possession? Haha, oops! Pinkie smiled sheepishly. I didn't want to take it all, I just wanted to take a piece.
Yes, that's all of it.
Pinkie noticed some vague, ever-warping, semi-transparent shape slowly filling her vision, no matter which way she looked, and even when she closed her eyes. A piece isn't all of it, it's just a small amount. I didn't want all of it, Pinkie insisted. That'd be mean. The shape was like a series of tubes that only seemed connected to something within the corner of Pinkie's vision, but whenever she looked at that central mass, it turned into more tubes. Plus, its words seemed to scrape at her insides, which was quite lucky for Pinkie Pie since her insides were itching her something fierce and she couldn't reach them.
I don't understand. A strange amalgam of moving shapes wants to take my making, but doesn't want to take it?
I didn't say that, you silly sausages!
Sausages?
The entity repeated. Pinkie winced and rubbed her eyes. You're so blurry. Hold on. She dug into her mane and pulled out a pair of glasses that she quickly put on. She blinked several times and then smiled and looked at the entity. It was silent. What's the matter?
You changed your shape. How?
It seemed perturbed that Pinkie was now staring at it without displaying any discomfort. I just put on glasses, Pinkie said matter-of-factly. Helps me to see better. The mass shifted.
I don't know this sea.
The sea itself snapped in several spots, then returned to its prior shape.
What do you want that you encroach here? That you enter this place, my home?
I came so I could learn how to make the lightest and fluffiest icing and whipped cream for my pastries. The entity shifted in Pinkie's vision before responding.
You make skies and clouds as well?
The pink pony rocked in place. No, pastries, she gasped. Are you a sky god?
Gods? I have heard of such things,
the mass said.
I can perceive them clearly, but I am not one, and neither are you, moving shapes.
Several clouds and a bunch of sky came from the mass and disappeared beneath the white sea. Whoa, you are a sky god!
Am I?
The entity pondered in confusion.
You want clouds? This is what you said?
Pinkie nodded. Yes, to make icing and whipped cream. There was a pause and the pink pony felt reality fold in on itself briefly.
I don't know that,
the entity said. This prompted its guest to gasp in horror. What? You've never heard of icing? What about cupcakes? Cakes in general? Marble cakes? Macarons? Chocolate bread?
Is it related to my...
The entity asked. Your what?
My...
It repeated. The pony shrugged. I don't know, she said, but I'm guessing not since it isn't a food. Reality folded again.
Food? Something you absorb? Allows for more.
No, silly, Pinkie laughed. Haven't you ever celebrated your birthday?
Birthday?
The entity repeated. Pinkie was going to burst. You don't know what a birthday is? She took the thing's silence as a confirmation. It's when you, The pink pony tried to find the best words. It's when you become aware. When there's everything around.
I have always been. No knowledge of anything before.
The voice said. Then we need to catch up with everything you haven't celebrated. Pinkie started bouncing up and down. His hearts and hooves, birthday, hearts warming, welcoming. So many you've missed. Experience?
4. And...
The entity said. It paused a moment, and Pinkie felt reality shiver.
I can give you a cloud, not as good, but if it fits your needs, many can come.
It said. It paused again and noticed Pinkie still not flinching at its presence. Oh boy! Let's go then, Pinkie shouted. She hurried over to her balloon and struggled to get over the basket ledge.
Come on in, we can go down this way.
Pinkie wasn't sure, but she had a feeling that the sky god was approaching her. The world spun as she felt herself falling upwards. Oh! There's Ponyville, she said calmly. How'd you know? She asked the entity.
No?
It repeated. The pink pony put a hind leg on the edge of the basket while they descended towards Sugar Cube Corner and raised a foreleg. Let's make that perfect icing! Ponyville was filled with celebrations and a ton of ponies next to the town hall. The pink pony was so excited to see that every pony kept coming back for more. She was gleaming with excitement and bouncing in place. There were gaming zones and most of the foals were located under the watchful eye of their parents, and a food stand zone where Pinkie and the cakes were located. There was a constant flow of customers and more kept coming back for more of Pinkie's new pastries. Pinkie, I have no idea how you managed to pull it off, but I think you've made the best pastry cream ever, Mrs. Cake complimented. Never tasted something so light, yet so filling at the same time. Mr. Cake chuckled. And to think you got this from tasting clouds. Pinkie narrowed her eyes and patted her mane. Yeah, and I got another secret to work with, she said. But, we're glad you made new friends, Mr. Cake continued. He and his wife turned away and shielded their faces with their hooves. But, did you have to bring that thing with you? Pinkie looked towards the sky god and all the pastries that it held aloft. It was far from the food stands, but still somehow right next to Pinkie Pie. Its mere existence messed with the senses. Several ponies were screaming hysterically, and some had buried their faces in dirt. One devoured a cake sloppily, then galloped and jumped through a window to get away from the blurry mass. There is no sky, it's just an infinity of fingers and toes scraping against the tapestry over and over again, another shouted through a bout of vague sanity. Phew, he's not doing anything, Pinkie said dismissively. Isn't that right, Sky God? She called out. A brief glance by the cake showed them that the thing hadn't moved, but Pinkie Pie shaped her mane into a thumbs up. How does she even know how to do that with her hair? Mr. Cake asked his wife. She doesn't even have conditioner. Shut up and keep selling the cakes. There's that one pony who keeps buying more, devouring them, then running around Ponyville, Mrs. Cake growled. Is he going to be okay at least? Mrs. Cake sighed. I hope so. I hope we'll be okay. Mr. Cake let his face drop onto the table. I should have stayed in bed. Me too, his wife agreed. The Pinkie Pie Incident by Sword Tune.
You have 3 hours.
We had walked ourselves into a classic Manhattan diner, the Morning and Night, owned by 2 stallions named Flapjack and Coffee Bean. They were polite folk, with Flapjack being from the countryside by the sound of his accent. Ma'ams, he had said, serving me a plate of blueberry pancakes and chocolate for my partner, Promise. Once he was out of our hair, my partner gave her a nervous glance. The records said they'd be here. Why don't I see the princess? I started sweating, partly because her anxiety was rubbing off, and partly because the atmosphere in the city of Manhattan, 1109 CE, was stale and choking. How were they going to find the source within 3 hours in a city like this? We were in the city 60 years before the incident swallowed it whole. The streets were more crowded than I could have imagined. They'll show up, I said. You see that guy? I pointed my hoof to a stallion sitting in a booth by the window. He had an old-fashioned notepad, actual paper, and wore a chevron moustache and short-cropped brown mane with streaks of grey running through it. Yes? Why? Matches the description of the reporter. That means we're close. The princess and the source should be arriving soon. This time, I was the one looking at my watch. 2 hours and 45 minutes. We didn't have a large window to complete our mission objective. According to the records, the reporter interviewed the princess and her friends for 2 hours. At that time, the source was spotted in the area. Our mission outfitter had done his homework at least. Promise had been given a replica of a late Celestia era dress, coated in purple sequins and accented with golden gemstones. For myself, a red turtleneck and beanie easily hid my warped horn and scars. From my shoulder hung a satchel which held all the relics of the time period to verify we had indeed found the source. I looked out to the faded notepad now, comparing it to the ones the reporter was scribbling in. The ink on mine was faded, but I could still make out what he was writing on the top page. It was a doodle of the princess punching a big horned centaur in the face. He's bored, my partner noted. They must be late. Or maybe he's early, I said. But none of that matters. This has happened already. We just need to wait and catch the source when she shows. What if we've changed too much? The source might suspect us. She might not even show up. That's impossible. The incident is decades away. She had no reason to suspect us. The only ones who are going to suspect us are the locals. My partner quieted down, but she was no less fidgety. The source had a habit of escaping. We learned this the hard way before time travelling, back when we thought we could contain in our own time. But it only took 16 months for the incident to spread from the source to the rest of the world, consuming everything in its wake. If we missed the window of opportunity, the only time where we knew the exact location of the source, there was no guarantee we'd be able to find it again.
2 hours and 30 minutes.
With that in mind, my partner headed for the road. I would have said something to bring her back, if I thought for a second that she'd listen. Instead, I kept an eye on her, watching as she paced up and down the street, her lips counting each step. I knew what she was doing. We had run drills for months in preparation for our mission, walking the streets of Manhattan in our own time, familiarizing ourselves with surviving maps and the devoured landscape of the city. But this looked nothing like the present. For one thing, the apartments across the street had been torn open, windows and walls, and all the food and drinks inside were gone without a trace. The streets were even and well maintained. Okay, they were maintained at least, despite the cracks and potholes They were definitely in a better state now than after all the fighting to stop the spread of the incident. I pressed my beanie down, feeling my twisted horn underneath. It had been like that for as long as I could remember. "Look alive," Promise said, planting herself back in her seat and shoving a whole pancake into her face. "The sauce?" "No, just the princess and her friends, including the progenitor." "Then we're right on target. Everything is continuing just like the record said. The source is bound to show up." The bell above the door rang as Princess Twilight and her 5 friends walked in. Almost immediately, the reporter perked up and flipped to the next page in his notepad. I did the same. He started with the purple-haired mare, Rarity. According to the records, they were here to discuss her business ventures after all. Then he moved on, asking questions to the princess herself. She was smaller than either of us expected, a lot smaller than the towering mare she had grown into in her later decades, but her purple coat and the streak of pink in her mane was unmistakable. "Do you want me to order you a milkshake?" I looked from the notepad. "What?" "Milkshakes. Should I order you one?" "We're on a mission. The fate of all Equestria depends upon us finding the source, and you're thinking about milkshakes?" "We'll be loitering if we don't order anything," she said, pointing to both our plates. "And don't act like you're still not hungry. When was the last time we had actual cooked food to eat, not wheat paste and buck soup?" I pressed my lips together, trying not to think of my stomach now that she was talking about food. But she was right. The owners weren't going to let us take up a table for hours unless we kept ordering. "Fine, a strawberry milkshake," I told her, "and fries." By the time my partner had finished her second chocolate milkshake, the reporter had cycled through each of the interviewees, asking them about the grand opening of Rarity's boutique. I eyed the progenitor with special care. "Now?" "Not yet," I said, turning several pages ahead to the reporter's citing of the source. A simple, "What was that?" next to a doodle of the progenitor could, under other circumstances, be regarded as a passing thought of no consequence. It was a small note in his margins, but ironically scribbled next to the progenitor's comments about self-duplication. "Making copies of yourself always sounds like a great idea," he had quoted. I showed that page to Promise. "They haven't reached this part yet," I told her. "When they do, we'll know for sure that the source is in sight." She grabbed the notepad away from me and flipped through it. "Pinkie is a big spender," she read aloud, followed by 3 bit signs. If her appetite is anything like the source, she should have ordered something by now. "The night is still young. She will." As if to prove my point, the progenitor stretched her hoof and waved over to Coffee Bean. "Don't want to rush you, but are my pancakes ready?" As tactful as the records say, I mused. "See? She's already ordered. We have plenty of time." "Except we are here this time," she said, "and we've been making orders since 6 o'clock. What if we've changed so much that the pancakes don't come out in time? The sauce might not even come anymore." I reached out and put my hoof over hers before her sharpened whiskers turned to full-on shouts. "Cool it. Nothing has changed. The kitchen can handle a few fries and milkshakes." I looked at every other plate in front of her, along with 2 orders of garlic bread and a plate of grilled zucchini. "Orders right here, Pinkamena," Flapjack called out, bringing a half-meter high stack of pancakes. "Celestia Almighty," I swore under my breath. "Maybe you're related." Leaning in closer to me, Promise nodded her head towards the door. Coming in from the bustling street, a pink-coated pony in a trench coat and dark hat over her face walked in. She signalled to Coffee Bean and took the booth just behind the progenitor. "The shady-looking one," my partner noted. "Think that's the source?" I wanted to believe she was, but there were dozens of pink and rose-coloured ponies in Manhattan. We passed 2 earlier before we even walked into the diner. Jumping too soon and causing a scene in the past could lead to irrevocable changes in the future, and not always for the better. I don't know, I told her, grabbing the notepad and listening in close to their conversation. And the Rarity was all like, "Oh, how I wish I could make more copies of myself," the progenitor said. "And did she?" the reporter asked. "I mean, Princess Twilight is known for her feats of magic." "Yeah, making copies of yourself always sounds like a great idea, but before you know it, you're locked in a room with 50 Pinkie Pies watching paint dry." At the moment the progenitor swallowed a few pancakes whole, the stranger turned, lifting her hat when Flapjack went over to take the order. It was only a moment, but a long enough one that we both caught a good glimpse of her face. "And she will have a face just like this picture," Promise whispered the words Princess Twilight had told us before we stepped onto that metal platform. "What now? Should we grab her?" "No, too risky," I said. "Riskier than losing her and going back to Equestria without chocolate? Who cares if we make a scene? We'll be out of here in a second." We had our little argument without either of us taking our eyes off the source. On the far side of the diner, the princess and her friends were chatting and drinking coffee, waiting for the reporter to call them to corroborate their friend's statements. "There's a lot of ponies," I said. "If I were her, I wouldn't leave through the front door. Let her take the alley door. We'll follow and corner her right by the machine." And right then, our waiter came over to our table. "You two ladies doing all right?" Flapjack was loud and confident, the bulk on his shoulders and back telling a lifetime of shucking hay bales and pulling ploughs. "Yes, we were just thinking of something else we'd like to order," my partner said. "Could you give us a few minutes?" Right, Flapjack clicked his tongue. "Thing is, I just came over from that table over yonder, and the lady there says you two have been oogling her since she came in. What's all this I'm hearing about cornering some pony?" He tipped his head in the direction of the source. "Reckon that'd make any pony uncomfortable." I laughed to hide my sudden discomfiture. "We're just waiting for someone, that's all. She looks like a friend of ours, and we noticed how much she looks like Pinkie Pie over there. And we were going to, corner them to ask if they were related, that's all. But we're sorry, we'll keep our eyes to ourselves." "Waiting for someone, huh? For what? Near 3 hours now?" Flapjack checked the clock on the wall and then clicked his tongue. "Yep, reckon so. Now either you two are the most patient gals in Equestria, or you ain't very good at spying whatever it is you're doing." "Spying? Us?" I laughed again. "That's ridiculous." "Sorry," Flapjack said, shaking his head with just tired resignation in his voice. "She's a regular here, and if I'm being honest, you two have been here a while and it's getting kind of weird. Gonna have to ask you to pay your bill and leave." He gestured out the back door. "What?" My partner snapped, her voice spiking tenfold and drawing the eyes of the whole diner, including the princess. "You can't just kick us out. I demand to see your manager." "You're looking at him," Flapjack said, shrugging. "Unless you want to talk to my husband, but he's a bit busy right now." He clicked his tongue and grinned. "With Princess Twilight and all, we're kinda busy." Slowly, I produced my purse from my bag and placed 72 bits on the table. "I understand. Sorry if we've bothered any pony." "Oath!" My partner shot me a surprised look. "What are you doing?" "The responsible thing. Trust me." I took it by a hoof and gave Flapjack a final nod before leaving through the back door, almost having to drag Promise with me into the alley. "How could you just walk out like that? The source saw us. She knows we're under her. It's just like the incident, always one step ahead of us." "Hey, can you chill for a second?" I snapped at her. "You understand that your outburst got more than just her attention, right? We're supposed to be discreet, but now our future's like a tree branch, full of budding directions and uncertainty. If we do anything out of the ordinary, Twilight told us that the future, our present, will be different every time." "It was always going to be different," Promise said back. "If we stop the source from causing the incident, what do you think is going to happen to us? Did you seriously think the new Princess Twilight will know who we are? How about the rest of the survivors?" I blinked, realizing that I hadn't given it much thought. I had been focused on capturing the source. "This is a one-way trip, Oath. The future we're going back to doesn't exist. But at least it'll be a future where the incident never happened. I looked sadly down at our watch. 10 minutes left. We were exiting the frame of certainty now. No, we had already left it when Promise shouted at Flapjack. But maybe it wasn't too late. She asked Flapjack to kick us out, I said, feeling hope come back to me. She wouldn't have done that if she planned on staying. You think? I nodded and then took my beanie off. My twisted horn glowed and I removed the concealing spell from the time machine. A circular metal plate lined with crystalline circuits all along the edge. It was so small it could have passed through a trash can lid if it wasn't so shiny. Good, it's still warm, I said. Let's cross the street and watch from there. And as soon as the source steps out, we grab her and hop on that machine as fast as we can. We'll be out of here before any pony has time to react. Promise stared at me. What happened to being subtle? Well, you kind of threw that out the window when you asked to see the manager, I told her. Without waiting for a response, I set out, pounding the ground with my hooves as I went, almost tasting the victory. The source was onto us now, and if she ran at the first sight of me, I wasn't confident I could catch her, being the monster that she was. But I had something a little better than speed, and I trusted I could count on her. Sure enough, I hadn't gone more than 5 steps before I heard my partner's hooves clopping along after me. What's our move if she runs? Promise asked, as if reading my mind. You run her down, I use magic, I said. Together we'll herd her into the alley and onto the machine. We turned the corner, but at that moment our hearts sank. She was gone. Where? Promise took a shocked step back, looking around the street. She couldn't have gotten far. She just couldn't have. She was right there. Where could she have gone? The sound answered before I could. It was a whirling, electrical sound that came from the alley, and though I didn't want to look bad, I already knew. Oath! Promise yelled. Oath, she's taking it! The source is taking the time machine! Oh, you bet! Cried its incessant rubbery squeak of a voice. This is the best gift I've ever gotten for 2 strangers. I'll make sure to let them know it was you. I only found just enough will to move my legs and looked back down the alley of the morning and night, and I watched as the source of the incident, the magical copy of Pinkie Pie, flashed into the future. Do you think, Promise asked me hopefully, do you think that was enough? I mean, she won't be around to start the incident, will she? My partner looked at me, and I looked at her, and all I could do was shrug. You never know with Pinkie Pies.